Alright, so this past weekend I went to regionals at Lindenhurst. It was a pretty small regionals. There's only about 150 people maybe. So top 16 qualified for Nats, and I ended up going 4-3. So I lost in the last round. If I would have won the last round, I might have gotten top 16. I'm a little disappointed with my performance, but um, I missed the first round. I was late, so not much you can do about that once it happens. So oh well. I'm pretty happy with how my deck did. I could have made it a little better probably, but it was definitely good enough. If I would have played a little better and been on time, I definitely would have gotten top 16. So first I'll just look at the cards I played, and then afterwards I'll go through round by round of my matchups. So I played standard 11 windups. I've said this before, but there's not any good reason to play anything else. And I was definitely happy with how they did at the tournament. And then I main decked two Fossil Dynas. I had been thinking about doing this for a few months actually, with my Dolces and Artifacts coming out. And I was definitely happy with how it did. Even if you're not playing against a deck where his first effect locks them down, his second effect is pretty good at destroying a big Exceed monster after they summon it. So it's very versatile. You can use it preemptively or reactively. And I was definitely happy with this. I'm going to keep main decking it. Thunder King wasn't quite as good as he used to be. There's just more decks that he's not that great against. And he was alright during the tournament, but there wasn't any games where I won just because I summoned Ryo. So it was just okay. And then duality is just consistency. I don't think I had it dead at all during the tournament. Sometimes you need the special summon, you can't play this. And Book of Moon, it's just Book of Moon, it's always good. And then Soul Charge, I only played one Soul Charge, which I think is the right number for this deck. Early game, you usually won't have any monsters in your grave. And late game, usually you won't have enough life points, because you oftentimes take a lot of damage dodging attacks with Rabbit. So the only time you can really use Soul Charge is during the middle game. So it's got a limited window in which you can actually use it. And if you draw two of them, it's extremely dead. It's really hard to get off more than one of these during a game. And it is good when it works. Like there was once during the tournament where my Magician summon was negated by Warning, and then I used Soul Charge on my Magician, and then I summoned Shark in my hand and went off anyways, even though they had Warning. So I was definitely happy with how Soul Charge did. It's a really good card, but I don't think you should play more than one in the deck. And then MST was good, even with artifacts. I only ended up playing one artifact deck, and during that you just use MST during the M phase and hope you don't hit Sanctum. So it's a good card against everything else. You just have to play MST pretty much. And then Factory is obvious. It was really good. You usually win when you draw it. And then Messenger came in handy in a lot of matches. It's good for stalling until you get all the cards you need. And then Staple Traps, good as you would expect. And then I decided to play Fiendish Chain instead of Breakthrough Skill for the tournament. I didn't think there would be very many artifact decks because it just came out. And Breakthrough Skill is better against artifacts by a lot, but against every other deck, Fiendish Chain is better. Breakthrough Skill is, against other decks, Breakthrough Skill is just a Fiendish Chain that doesn't stop attacks and only negates for one turn. So it's definitely worse against every other deck. So I didn't want to sacrifice my other matchups just for the one time I would play artifacts. Maybe two times I would play them. So I was happy with playing Fiendish Chain instead, because I did only play one artifact deck all tournament. So and with the format evolving, it depends on how prominent the matchup goes, but I might start playing Breakthrough Skills. I could do some combination of the two though. Playing all of one might not be the best choice. It depends on how the meta goes. And then Black Horn of Heaven was awesome. It was good against every deck. Even decks that don't go into the extra deck too much will do it once during the game, and then you just use this when they do. And it's a blowout card against certain matchups. It's really good. One of the best traps you can play. And then Dimensional Prison isn't really that great, but you need something to take monsters off the field that are already on the field, and the battle traps are some of the better ways to do that. And so you have to kind of play it, even though it can be dead sometimes when your opponent's going off during their main phase. And then Prison is much better than Mirror Force. It's not even close. The hands just make Prison even better than it was before. And there's a lot of monsters that can't be destroyed that Prison is good against. So Prison over Mirror Force for sure. And then I mained 2 Mind Crushes. This is good against a lot of the decks that I have bad matchups against, which I was pretty lucky. I actually didn't play very many bad matchups. So, but it's still good against pretty much everything. Even with decks that don't search a lot, you can use it when they use that Pot of Duality. So, and then Wiretap was really good. I'm really happy I decided to play 2 of this. It just lets your plays go through, and a lot of traps are power cards, so it's really good at stopping some of your opponent's big plays. And then my side deck, I decided to side my Maxis instead of maining them because it's really good against certain matchups like Madolche and Dragon and Artifact, but against other decks it's just not as good. Like Bujin, it's really bad against. And I didn't want to sacrifice my other matchups to help against the special summon matchups. So I decided to side it, and I was pretty happy with that decision. I think siding it was the way to go for this tournament. And then I sided 2 tour guides. I want tour guide there as a card I can side in for matchups where Dino is bad. And tour guide is also really good against Geargia because you can go into Alucard. So it's good to have in the side. I'm siding 1 Twister and 1 Dust Tornado. Spell trap removal. I actually came up against a lot of Kaiser Coliseums this weekend. I think 3 different matches played it against me. So these were good to side in against that, and it's also good against other continuous spell and trap cards that you can come up against. And then Dimensional Fissure and Soul Drain. I didn't actually end up siding these in. I didn't play any matches where they were really that good against it. So, but they're good to have if you go up against dragons or mermaids. It's a win card if they can't get it off the field. And then Dark Hole is really good in certain matchups. I sided this in a pretty decent number of times. It's good against a lot of rogue decks, and it's good against Geargia. And then Light Imprisoning Mirrors, that's mostly for the Bujin matchup, which I didn't have to play. But it's good against any other light deck, which I did play. So it's pretty good. It's very good against light decks. It's a little specific though compared to most of my other extra deck, compared to most of my side deck. And then 1 trap stun for decks that are trap heavy, mostly for chain burn, because this isn't a win card against them. I only sided 1 because I do have the 2 wiretaps in the main. I wanted to side a second, but there wasn't room. I also wanted to side a compulsory evacuation device, but again, I couldn't find room. If I could, I would like to side those 17 cards. I don't think you really need to side anything else, though. And then Vanity's Emptiness, good against decks that special summon a lot. And Needle Sealing is good against decks that put a lot of monsters on the field, like Geargia and the Dolces. So I like adjusting my trap lineup with cards like these against certain decks. So that's also why I like siding Compulse, so I can adjust my trap lineup. And then in the extra deck for my rank 3s, I ran Invoker, Zenmaines, Levier, Engineer, Alucard, and Acid Golem. I decided to take out 1 Alucard, cut it down to 1. Alucard's not as good anymore because he's bad against both artifacts and the hands. So it's not as clear cut, go into a la carte, destroy sets. You have to think about it. You have to make sure you're not playing against an artifact deck or a deck that's using the fire and ice hands. It's still a good card though, and it's really good against certain matchups. And then nothing too noteworthy besides that. Um, you can look at my reasoning for all these cards in my deck profiles too. And then for rank 4s, Papal Operative, Silent Honor Arc, Direwolf, Ragnar Zero, and 2 Abyss Dwellers. I decided to keep the 2 Abyss Dwellers in. It's really good against both the hands and the artifacts, so it's better than it was before, and I was already playing 2, so it's a really good card. A lot of times your opponent will destroy the first one and then you summon the second one in response, and usually they won't have a way to get around it at that point. I think I only went into 2 of them once, but I made one of them a lot. Ragnar Zero is a new one. I didn't actually end up playing this. The main thing I like Ragnar Zero for is you can use it against Harpies. If you have the MST for their field spell, you'll probably win because their field spell is the only thing that really gives you issues. But if you don't have the MST, then you can summon Ragnar Zero, and then you have a fighting chance. You can take out 2 of their monsters and draw 2 cards. And if you get the first destroy off, you'll probably get the second destroy off because it's quick effect. So it's really good. You can use it on your opponent's turn. So I didn't use it during the tournament. I've used it a few times otherwise in my testing. I like it so far, but I need to see it more just to make an opinion. And Direwolf and Honor Arc I used a lot, both of them. They put in a lot of work during the tournament. And then for rank 5s, Volcasaurus, Tyrus, and Gaia Dragon. I didn't make Gaia Dragon that often, but I did Volcasaurus a lot. I would either keep my messenger piece up and then make Volcasaurus, and then I could do damage even without attacking, or I would use Volcasaurus off of a Soul Charge. There was one point where I brought back 2 sharks and made a Volcasaurus, and then burned my opponent with it. So Volcasaurus is good in a situation where you can't attack. So I like the deck. I think there's a few changes I'm thinking about making to it. So I'll probably adjust it a little bit, and then I'll have a deck profile maybe in a week or so. So then I'll go right into my matchups for the weekend. Okay, so the first round I was late, so I lost the first round without playing. So I had an uphill battle from that point on. I could only lose one more time during the tournament, and still get top 16. And then right off the bat, round 2, I was up against Medolces. And this guy was also late, so it wasn't like he lost the first round either. Game 1, my opponent opened hardly any monsters, so I was able to take out the few that he did with my traps pretty easily. And then I summoned a Dweller, and then followed it up by summoning a Dyna, and then I won with that position. I think he scooped. And then game 2, I was able to use my traps to keep my opponent from going off, but I didn't draw into any of my combo pieces. I didn't get any factories or anything. And his monsters with the field spell are all bigger than Wind Up Rabbit, so he was able to keep attacking me. So even though I was able to keep his swarm from going off, he beat me down with I think a Magiline, and I just couldn't stop it. And then game 3 was a really good game. He ended up getting an Angeli and a Hootcake, but I was able to stop both of them. So he didn't go off with his plays, but he has a Chateau, and he summons Magiline, and he is using that to beat as a beat stick like he did in the second game. And then the game goes into time at that point. But I'm able to make a Direwolf, and I use Direwolf to kill the Chateau and then attack over the Magiline. And he still has a Prohibition out at this point, and he called Shark. So I can't make any plays past this with the Prohibition out. So he draws, and it's turn 3 in time. And he doesn't have a play, so he just sets a monster. So then it's my turn, and I am able to summon a rabbit from my hand and pop the prohibition and bounce the rabbit. And I have 2 sharks in my hand that I can now use. And I have a rat on the field because I had been banishing my rat continuously for the past like 3 turns, I think. And I had just been special summoning a rabbit and then banishing the rat. Um, to help keep my life points up by having a floating defender every turn, pretty much. So using that rat, I special summon a rabbit from my grave, and then the 2 sharks from my hand. I use my rabbit and rat to make a Alucard, pop his face down monster, and then I attack the game. So that was turn 4, so I had to finish him off that turn. I only had let's see, I had 800 life points at that point, and he had 5,400. So I needed to make a big play that turn, and I did. Mind Crush was really good in this matchup because I was able to hit his Angeli every single time he searched it from his deck. So I don't think he ever summoned it during the game. He might have summoned it once, I think. Yeah, so I was able to keep his Angeli off the field really easily, actually. And then the next round, I had a pretty easy matchup. I was up against Heraldic Beast, and I beat him in 2 games. Both times, he went into big fields of multiple Exceed monsters. They were pretty good ones, too, but the problem was that he didn't have any traps either game. I don't know if he didn't play any, but I had multiple factories both games, and since he had no traps, I just game 1 I make a big field and take out all of his monsters, and then the next turn I finish him off. And then game 2 I just OTK him, even though he has a field up. I just OTK through it. So it was a pretty easy matchup. It would have been harder if he was actually playing traps. And then round 4, I went up against Gladiator Beast Firefist. I don't know what ratios he was running, but I saw a lot of both of the archetypes, so it looked to be a pretty even mashup of the 2. Game 1, the only trap I draw all game is Dimensional Prison, so I'm able to stop one of his plays, but then every play after that goes off, and I just get overwhelmed. He keeps getting advantage through both of his engines at the same time, so that game got out of control pretty quickly. And then game 2, he has Kaiser Coliseum up, but I draw MST. As soon as I draw it, I'm able to go off, make a big play, and I actually OTK him during that game. And then game 3, was kind of embarrassing. Since I OTK'd the previous time, I didn't realize that I hadn't rewritten the life points. And in the previous game, he had used Upstart Goblin, so I thought that I had more life points than I actually did in game 3. So there was an argument over the life points until I realized what I had done. So that was kind of embarrassing for me. It didn't end up mattering. I had 2,000 life points at the end. I thought I had 3,000, but I had 2,000. So not a big deal. But he also had Kaiser Coliseum this game, and I didn't have an MST, so I had to play around it. But I was able to take his monsters off the field enough times that I was able to make my big plays, and so I won that even with the misunderstanding. And then round 5, I played Artifacts. So this game I didn't play my best. I think I might have been able to win this if I'd played better. So game 1, I should have surrendered. Game 1, I kept playing it out, and it ended up taking a long time. It took like 25 minutes, I think, maybe 30. So game 1, I had a factory, and I was able to get lots of searchers off, so I had a large amount of card advantage. but my opponent made a large play using, I think, a bagel tack, and or however you pronounce that. And afterwards, on his turn, he used Soul Charge, and he went into two Pleiades and one Durandal. And so he had a massive field because he had back row in addition to that. But I still actually had more cards than he did in terms of pure card number, so I thought maybe I could force out his effects and then take out his monsters. So I tried going for it. I tried playing out of it, and I was able to get rid of their effects. I was able to handle the monsters, but by that point I didn't have any cards left. I had to use all my cards to do it, and I didn't have any follow-up plays, so I lost. So I should have surrendered. That ended up costing me taking so long in that game. And then game two, we didn't have very much time left, and I was going off with my plays once again. So, but this time he didn't have much, so he scooped with 2 minutes left, so that we would have time to go into the third game. If he hadn't have scooped, it would have ended in a tie. So it was a good call on his part. And then game three, we went into time almost immediately. I think it was either his first turn or my first turn. I think he went first, and then I went, and then went into time on my very first turn. That's what happened. So I ended up, what I did was I played Duality, and I chose Fossil Dyna off of Duality, but he saw that I chose Fossil Dyna, so he right away, as soon as I added it to my hand, he went off, summoned 3 artifact monsters. If I had been able to summon the Dyna before he did that, then he didn't have any plays, so I would have won. But he made the right call there, and because it was in time, I didn't have a way to get over his field and then do damage before the time ran out, before the 5 turns were over. If it wasn't in time, I think I probably would have won this game. I had the Dyna, and I also had a warrior and a shark for a rank 5 play, which I ended up going for, but he ended up stopping that. So I lost that game. And so that's my second loss of the tournament. This guy ended up getting 7th place, so he made the top 8. So that was pretty good for him. His deck was just pure artifacts. I didn't see any of the hands or trap tricks in there. The only other monsters I saw were Card D, and he actually summoned Majesty's Fiend in the first game. So I used Acid Golem to get around that. And then round 6, I was up against Constellars. So in this matchup, he used Kaiser Coliseum a lot, and I used Messenger of Peace a lot. So it was lots of stalling until we got our plays. And so game 1, we exchanged cards a lot, but I had answers for all of his plays that he went for. And then I ended up top decking a Thunder King, and I summoned Thunder King and just beat him down with it. He didn't have any cards left at that point, and I had a couple, so it was pretty simple win from there. And then game 2, we both exchanged cards again, like in the first game, and this time we actually ended up both having 0 exactly. And he gets to draw first, and he ended up drawing a monster, and so he won, just because I didn't have enough life points at that point. And then game 3, I had 2 factory, and so I was able to search with both of them the first turn. And then he responded by going for an Omega, but I had Light Imprisoning Mirror and Dimensional Prison, so I used those 2 together to get rid of his Omega. So I was able to beat him pretty easily after that. And then round 7, I went up against Infernities. At this point, we were both 4 and 2. So if we won, we probably would have gotten top 16. And so game 1, he went off, and he ended up, I think, with 11 cards on his field, 5 monsters, a field spell, and 5 spell and trap cards. I It might have been only 10, but it was 10 or 11. It was pretty ridiculous. Um, and I had a chance because I did open with Dyna, so I could take out his entire field with that. Um, but I also had the wiretap for his what's it called, for his Infernity Barrier. So I could have gotten out of it, but he was able to he used during my end phase. He used 2 Infernity breaks, and then he made Direwolf to destroy my face down Dyna. So I surrendered without showing what my Dyna was, because I didn't have a chance in that game. And then game 2, I was able to go first, and I had answers for all of his plays. One of them was he used the effect of Stygian Street Patrol, and I called Infernity Archfiend without knowing what his hand was, just because I assumed that he had one in his hand. There weren't any in the grave at that point, so I was right, and that shut out any chance he had pretty much. And I used the Direwolf to take out a lot of his back row. And then game 3, I had my max season at this point, and he was going first, but I did not open with any of them, unfortunately. So he went off, and he didn't have quite as strong a field as the first game, but he did have the barrier. And so even though I had a Dyna, he could just negate the Dyna effect with barrier. And I did end up drawing Max C, but it was after he already went off, and I did end up drawing Wiretap, but it was too late. Also, there wasn't enough time to do the Dyna play to clear his field at that point, so um, he ended up winning game 3 also. He also, worth noting, he had Soul Charge both games 1 and 3, and that was why he was in the first game able to make such a dominant field, and why in the third game he was able to make a field at all. He said afterwards that he wouldn't have been able to make any plays game 3 if he didn't have the Soul Charge. So that's unfortunate. I don't think there's any way I could have won that round. I think he just opened too well and I opened too poorly. So I don't think I could have done anything differently there. So that's too bad, but he was a cool guy, and he ended up getting 15th, so he qualified for Nats. So I'm happy for him. So that was my tournament. I ended up going 4-3 with the first round loss. So I was a little disappointed. I wanted to qualify for Nats, but I think the deck did well, so I'm happy with that, and I'm going to be bringing it to the next regional. I think it's at Tinley Park. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to check out some of my other stuff. I'll have links up after this.